Oh geez, I am so done with this series. What's up guys, it's your girl, Lady Pelvic. I'm hitting you up with another blast from the past, Breath of Fire 2, which came out December 2nd, 1995 for the SNES, in the US. I played the one available on my 3DS, which was the SNES instead of the Game Boy Advanced. That was my first mistake. I'll briefly touch up on the differences of the SNES version versus the Game Boy Advance version and why the Game Boy Advance is superior in every way. And frankly, probably would have made this experience a lot more enjoyable. Alright, from a modern standpoint, without further ado, let's take a look at Breath of Fire 2.
Breath of Fire 2 takes place 500 years after the original game. It starts with a giant fucking eyeball speaking to you about God. Give yourself to God, pray for God's big dick energy. But never mind all that, you're the young protagonist Ryu, off to find your sister resting by the sleeping dragon in the town's backyard. You find your sister all is well, you return to the town that you've been living in since the day you were born, and nobody knows you. Instantly you're drawn in and confused. That's when you meet Bo, an orphan and thief who convinces you to leave the town with him. You do so and you run into this. Needless to say, you won't win. Cue in the 10-year time skip where you and Bo are part of the Rangers Guild, taking on odd jobs. The Church of Eva is popping up everywhere you go, spreading the good word of God. Later, your friend ends up being framed, so you search for the true culprit while demons disguised as good people are being discovered, which ultimately leads Ryu to his destiny.
While the story is predictable, it's infinitely better than the first game, and like most early JRPGs, it's easy to pinpoint the plot and what's going to happen. But still, I like to look at the journey, how it flowed, and how the characters blended in the character arcs.
Throughout your quest, you're constantly giving choices. While most didn't affect the story, some choices led to getting characters earlier or had a huge impact on the story, especially if you're going for that true ending. And while Breath of Fire 2 did exceed Breath of Fire 1 story-wise, the translation made for frustrating times. While fusing, if you said yes while needing an explanation of joining souls, you automatically began joining souls instead of hearing the explanation. Or Trubo's name being misspelled during his fight. Or my personal favorite, meet Ifrit's cousin, Ifrit. These are only a few examples. I've left a link in the description of Clyde Mandelon's comprehensive article listing 400 examples of poor translations, phrasing, text formatting, even programming errors. I'm telling you, the translation was absolutely awful and Capcom should be ashamed. Aside from translation, the characters' journeys I found enjoyable. I mean, what video game has you venturing through toilets? Yeah, not many. Or giving a smooch to some poor unfortunate soul who got turned into a frog, only to have him turn back into his true form, which is also a frog? And the characters actually had some compelling backgrounds. Personally, Nina, the bird person, her story hits right in the feels. Even characters from the first game make an appearance. The fuck you mean you don't know me? All around me are familiar faces. Although some characters you can actually recruit. I do admit, seeing familiar faces in the wild places you go to was a lot of fun. The gameplay works similarly to the first one. Travel the world slowly and get stopped every 5 seconds because of a ridiculously high encounter rate. In fact, I'm going to say it's higher than the first one, and for some reason they took away an item from Breath of Fire 1, the Marb 3, which blocks random encounters for a certain amount of steps. In Breath of Fire 2, there's smoke, which might keep away monsters, which, by the way, rarely works. I admit they did give a way to avoid random encounters, but that's only if you had the correct character in your party. So before you get into an encounter, you can mess with the formations, which allow for higher damage dealt, more damage taken, or a more defensive stance. While in fight mode, the interface looks so much nicer. With there being health bars instead of fraction numbers, you're also able to attack, defend, use magic or an item. Each character also has special skills, like Nina, who can recover SP every other time you use it, or Sten's RIP, where he plays dead and isn't attacked by enemies. There are also some specials that got the short end of the stick, like Spar's nature could only be used outdoors, or else when he summons nature, nothing happens. But no one answered. When you fuse characters, which I'll get into in a second, some of their special abilities change. And of course, the staple in Breath of Fire is Ryu turning into a dragon, which is done differently than the first game. It consumes all MP, and the more MP you have, the more damage it does. whereas in the first game it consumed X amount of MP and you stayed in dragon form the entire battle, rather than reverting back after a single attack. However, the most common option you'll be using is auto attack. I swear, it's like the developers knew you'd be fighting monsters every 3 steps. Well, at least you didn't have to grind.
Oh wait, yes, you did.
Once again, the experience and money ratio is terrible. Not only that, but unlike the first game, you could only have 4 characters with you at all time, meaning only 4 characters gained experience. It's not even like the other characters had level up with you when you went to switch them out. Nope, your main crew could be 22, 21, 20, and the people on the bench will still be 11 and 12. It's fucking awful. I don't know why they switched that from the main game. To add insult to injury, there are several moments where characters go solo, so if you haven't been leveling them up, like me, you're in for a heap of trouble. You basically gotta run away from everything until you rejoin your party. In the original Breath of Fire, you fused your companions who were always with you. In this game, you fuse with shamans, which greatly powers up your stats. There's Fusion Level 1, which is just a small stat bonus, Fusion 2, which is a greater one that changes your character's color, and a Superior Fusion, which changes your character's appearance entirely. This is one of my favorite things in the game, seeing your favorite characters looking like complete queens, or walking seedlings. Either way, it's really fun to experiment. Exploring in Breath of Fire 2 still has the same monotonous feeling of Breath of Fire 1, except being more frustrating, being how you walk so slowly, many houses were empty, NPCs had a lot of repeated dialogue with translation issues. More notable NPCs had influence in the mood jewel, which was a really pointless convention. If it goes black, I don't know if I could trust this guy, and any light color was good vibes. If you ever played a JRPG before, you know right off the bat who's cool and who's suspicious. On the world map, sometimes you gotta turn your ass back around because you don't have the correct character with the necessary field skill. Another problem with having characters not all traveling with you. As you get characters, each has a useful field skill, like Sten, who has stretchy arms, who could go over cliffs, or Jean the Frog, who could swim in shallow waters. There were a few interesting and optional landmarks that warranted exploring, such as fishing spots, which is Ryu's field skill. An issue I had with the previous Breath of Fire is the leader of your party is the only one who could use their field skill, and you had to go into the messy menus to switch out your party. In this game, it was as simple as a click of a button. Hunting was made easier. Sometimes a patch of grass would appear on the field, taking you to a different hunt screen, uninterrupted by random encounters. Another boon of exploring is you'd run into certain people with a unique skill set who would be looking to open shop in a town. Early in game, for plot purposes, you get Township, which is an empty town. You can recruit these NPCs to open up shop, which opens you to some great equipment and spells. However, you can only recruit so many people at once, so be wary of who you allow to join.
First, I want to touch up the GBA port versus the SNES version. First, we have the obvious, bright colors,
and mainly the golden money ratio, curing this game of its biggest issue, grinding. Also, the menus are a bit more updated, as are character portraits, so you can get around smoother. And they brought back Dash from the Game Boy Advance version of Breath of Fire 1. Pretty much you just move faster, which is always welcomed. It is sad to say the translation issues were not addressed in the Game Boy Advance port. And that's really it for the differences. The graphics, however, have updated sprite work that I really enjoyed. I didn't think it was like a huge leap, but it was definitely noticeable. Certain enemies definitely stood out more than others. Seeing familiar enemies from the first game made a comeback, it felt great. Looking at them side by side, you could definitely see the graphical leap. The overworld felt a bit empty and lackluster, very broken up, as most of it's just water. At the very least, I can't give credit to there are no water battles, so that was kinda nice. The day and night cycle definitely made it feel like you were traveling for a hot minute. Spells were certainly updated from the first game to the second. Here's a side-by-side comparison of a spell that I just thought, wow, the difference incredible. Also, Ryu's later dragon forms were looking amazing. Dungeon design. Let me know in the comments below, but does every Breath of Fire game have that one annoying dungeon? Because Breath of Fire 2 actually had some pretty noteworthy dungeons, both clever and frustrating. Admittedly, I say frustrating because it took me a while to understand some dungeons, but if you really think about it, it was really innovative. Most dungeons have standard pitfalls or hidden switches, but Breath of Fire 2 really took some creative liberties playing with the player's sight, or giving the player the option of how to fight a boss based on how you go through a dungeon. I do gotta give mad props to the dungeon designers. Bravo. They also did a great job with menus, a lot neater while buying items and selling items or looking at character stats. Item descriptions have a huge improvement, detailing how much HP is recovered. They really did step up their game. Also, when characters fuse, their portrait changes in the menu, which I thought was a cute touch. And lastly, we come to the music. Good, but not Breath of Fire 1 good. It does have a lot of similar things to Breath of Fire 1, such as the overworld music gradually getting better as you progress story. The dungeon music was good, it's just the first game did everything a little bit better. And by no means, the soundtrack wasn't bad, but it's like, why would you listen to this one when you could be listening to the first game? Anyways, my favorite track you hear late in game, and that's only if you traverse the world in a certain way. So I'll keep you in the dark, even though it's a staple way of traveling in the Breath of Fire series. And the name probably gives it away anyways, but enjoy the White Wings.
Breath of Fire 2 gets a 5.56 out of 10. I don't think you guys understand how terrible the grinding was in this game. It just stopped the story pacing from flowing. Because imagine going into a fucking dungeon, you have to stay by the front, so you like fight all the enemies, and then you can quickly exit so you could heal, replenish your mana, whatever, and then go back in, repeat, rinse and repeat. Or you find like a healing spring, and then you do that, and you just kind of stay near there. And it just, every dungeon, almost every dungeon, you had to do that. And when your characters had solo moments and you didn't level up these characters, you know, you didn't want to grind your entire fucking party because grinding was the biggest nuisance in this fucking game, you would struggle. You ran away from everything until you reunited with your fucking team. Okay, I love grinding, but this was, apparently I don't love it that much, maybe. Not as much as I thought. I get for its time, it did maybe a few things, but, like, it took the good and the bad of Breath of Fire 1 and made it better and worse. Like, the grinding aspects of 1, it made it worse. You can't have all the characters in your party and level them up anymore. You know, it's just 4 characters and you're stuck with them. On the other hand, fusing was great because your entire party could be fused. There's different levels of fusions. That was great. Even the story was better with the predictable plot, but the characters, like, I actually felt for them. Before, other characters, I was like, oh, you joined the party, congratulations, woohoo. And the translation issues is just inexcusable. Like, it actually confuses the player. Some names, some, like, Japanese references aren't translated over, so you think, like, oh, you're supposed to find this person. Like, why is this person saying this Japanese name? What is this? Dare I say, people who love this game love it for nostalgia purposes, because I can't find any other reason why people would, sorry. Now, if you play the Game Boy Advance version, I'm sure you'll have a better time, as the game should flow better because they correct the grinding and money gain, although the translation issues are still untouched. So if this game had like corrected grinding, honestly, it'd be like a 7 out of 10. The story isn't bad, didn't really blow me away. There are a few moments where it's like, haha, this is cute, but that's pretty much all I got. Anywho, trying to end on a positive note, this game is proof that Capcom is learning the art of JRPGs, even though they haven't quite nailed it yet. Now, people tell me Breath of Fire 3 and 4 is where the game like really stands out, so that's why I played 1 and 2 to see how the series evolved, and while I hate the adventure so far, I'm reluctantly open to playing 3 and 4, but for now, I'm all out of Breath of Fire. Get it?
Thank you so much for watching. Top Box is more reviews of Bottom Box is my Let's Play channel. We are on Case 3 of Danganronpa. Also, don't forget, I'm streaming now, twitch.tv/LadyPelvic.